I was adding the last name to my guest list when Mom's text came through. Your sister's wedding is the family's priority. We can't make it to yours. No exclamation mark, no pause, just final. It landed harder than I expected, like someone quietly locking a door from the other side. I didn't argue. I just stared at the blinking cursor, typed, "That's fine," and closed the laptop. A week later, while they were dressing up for Chloe's big day, the world discovered something they never bothered to ask about. My ceremony was already happening under the olive trees of my own 6 million villa in Tuscany. And when the photos surfaced, the silence from home said everything. Before I tell you how it all unfolded, hit like and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Because sometimes the people who were supposed to show up for us never do. When people ask what growing up in our house was like, I never know where to start. From the outside, we looked picture-perfect Christmas cards in matching sweaters, smiles wide enough to convince anyone we were close. But if you looked long enough, you'd notice the pattern. Every story, every celebration somehow looped back to my younger sister, Chloe. She was the family's orbit. I was the quiet background, keeping the whole system balanced. I used to think it was normal how Mom's eyes lit up every time Chloe entered a room. How Dad bragged about her dance trophies at every dinner. When I brought home science fair ribbons or straight A's, they'd nod politely and change the subject. Mom would say things like, "You're lucky, Ruby. Things just come easier for your sister." That word lucky always stung. It made every hour I'd spent working feel invisible. There's a photo album somewhere in my parents' living room that tells the whole story better than I could. Page after page of Chloe twirling in pink tutus, Chloe blowing candles, Chloe at prom. I appear once, maybe twice, cropped at the edge or half turned away. When I was 16, I found one photo where I remembered standing right beside her, but in the printed version, my face was gone, literally trimmed out of the frame. Mom said it was to make the composition neater. I didn't cry. I just stopped expecting to be in the picture at all. Grandma Helen was the only one who noticed. She used to slip me quiet reassurances during family dinners, leaning in close to whisper, "Don't worry, sweetheart. Some people only see what's shiny." She had a way of saying things that made you feel seen without needing to explain yourself. My cousin Rachel, too, she was always the one on birthdays after my parents forgot. But favoritism doesn't explode overnight. It seeps in slowly until silence feels safer than confrontation. By the time we were adults, it had become a language in itself. When Chloe forgot my college graduation, Mom called it a simple misunderstanding. When she borrowed money and never returned it, Dad said she's still finding her way. So, when the wedding text came through, I wasn't shocked. It just confirmed what I had always known. I had spent my whole life being the adjustable one, the one who bent, so others could stay comfortable. But that night, as I sat staring at Mom's message, something shifted. For once, I didn't bend. I looked around my apartment, the soft hum of the fridge, the scent of cedar candles I'd lit to calm myself. My wedding invitations were still stacked neatly on the counter, each one handwritten, sealed in gold wax. I'd imagined them sitting proudly on my parents' fridge. Now I imagined them unopened, tossed aside for Chloe's glossy event. And yet beneath the ache, there was a strange calm forming, a quiet realization that this was my chance to stop begging for a seat at their table. 2 days after that message, Chloe called like nothing had happened. Her voice was bright, sugary, the kind she used when she wanted something. "Can you believe it?" she said. "The venue we wanted opened up last minute. It's the same weekend as yours, but that's fine, right? You're on the West Coast. We're in Boston. It's destiny. Destiny." She actually said that word like she just quoted a Hallmark card. For a few seconds, I couldn't even speak. I just listened to the clinking of her bracelets through the phone and realized she was waiting for me to congratulate her. "That's great, Chloe," I said, keeping my voice even. "Really? Perfect timing." She giggled. "I knew you'd understand. You've always been so reasonable." Reasonable. That was my assigned role in our family script. Steady, mature, predictable. The one they could lean on while they indulged her every impulse. The next evening, Mom called. Her voice carried that careful tone she used when she was about to disappoint me, but didn't want to feel guilty about it. "Sweetheart," she began, "about the wedding dates Chloe's fiancé's family can only do that weekend. She's very emotional right now, and it would mean so much if you could be flexible." Flexible. Another word that used to define me, I asked quietly. "So, you want me to move my wedding?" Mom hesitated. "We just think it would be easier for everyone. You're so independent, Ruby. You'll understand." The irony almost made me laugh. Easier for them. For her. Not once did she ask what it would cost me. "Mom," I said slowly. "You promised you'd be there." She sighed long and weary as if I were the one being unreasonable. "It's not about choosing sides. It's just logistics." That word logistics hit harder than I expected. It was my entire career, the field I'd built a company around. Logistics meant precision, integrity, fairness. But in my family's dictionary, it was just another excuse for betrayal. That night, I called my father. He answered with his usual calm, practical tone. "Ruby, you know how your sister gets. If we don't go, she'll take it personally. You've always been the strong one." I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. "So, you're saying it's my job to understand again?" He didn't answer. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. For a long time, I just sat in the dark. The only sound, the low hum of the refrigerator and the clock ticking past midnight. The light from my engagement ring caught the edge of the counter, scattering little reflections across the wall, like fragments of something I'd been trying to hold together too long. That's when it clicked. I realized my family wasn't cruel in loud, obvious ways. Their weapon was omission, leaving me out of pictures, out of conversations, out of priority lists. I'd been trained to interpret silence as love. Not this time. I closed my laptop, opened my travel bookmarks, and clicked on a listing I'd saved months ago. A stone villa in Tuscany surrounded by olive groves. The photos glowed like a dream gold light on terracotta walls. If they wouldn't show up for me, I'd build something they could never ignore. The next morning, I booked a flight to Italy. No announcement, no family group chat, no dramatic goodbye, just a single decision made in silence. When the plane descended over the hills of Tuscany, the light was different, softer, almost forgiving. I rented a small car and drove through winding roads lined with cypress trees until I reached the villa I'd only seen in pictures. It was older than I'd imagined. Stone walls the color of honey, wooden shutters cracked with age, olive trees stretching beyond the horizon. The caretaker, an older man named Senor Rossi, handed me a ring of keys and said in careful English, "This place waits for someone who sees it." For the first time in months, I felt seen. Inside, the air smelled of earth and dust, like a place that remembered every voice that had ever echoed through it. As I walked from room to room, I realized this wasn't just a house. It was a blank canvas. A chance to rebuild my story without anyone editing me out. Over the next few weeks, I poured myself into restoring it. I hired local craftsmen who treated every beam and brick as if it were sacred. The sound of hammers and laughter mixed with a hum of cicadas. Every evening I'd sit on the terrace with a notebook sketching the courtyard for the wedding. One long stone table under a canopy of vines, strings of lanterns overhead. No family table, no seating hierarchy, just one place for everyone who chose to be there. The locals started calling me La Sora Sencio, the quiet lady. I liked that. My silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was strategy. When I called my fiancé and told him my plan, he didn't question it. He just said, "If this is what peace looks like for you, I'm in." And for the first time in my life, I believed someone meant it. A week later, I began sending out new invitations. Not the embossed gold kind I'd sent before, but simple cream envelopes with olive leaves pressed inside. Handwritten, personal, sincere. The first went to Rachel, my cousin, who'd never forgotten my birthday. Then to Grandma Helen, who had always seen through the family's illusions, and one by one, replies started coming in. Rachel called me first. We heard what happened. Aunt Judy told everyone Chloe's wedding was the main event. We're done pretending. Send us the details. We'll be there. Her voice cracked halfway through. Not from pity, but from loyalty. By the end of the week, flights were booked. Grandma messaged, I've missed enough real love in my life. I'll be in Tuscany, my dear. The group chat they started called itself the real family table. Photos of passport suitcases and laughing emojis filled my phone. For the first time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt chosen. And somewhere between the olive trees and the smell of fresh plaster, I realized this wasn't revenge. This was revelation. The morning of both weddings arrived under the same sun, two worlds unfolding miles apart. In Boston, the air was heavy with humidity and nerves. The hotel ballroom glimmered under chandeliers, but there was an uneasiness that even the florist couldn't hide. Half the chairs near the front sat empty. Mom stood by the entrance in her lavender dress, smiling too wide, pretending not to notice how many familiar faces were missing. Dad checked his watch, then his phone, then the door again. Maybe the flights got delayed. Mom whispered, her voice brittle, but no one was coming. Inside, Chloe adjusted her veil for the 5th time. Her bridesmaids hovered, whispering, Where's Grandma? Didn't she always sit in the first row? Chloe's smile wavered. She must be running late, she said, but her voice cracked. The photographer shifted awkwardly, repositioning the guests to make the room look fuller. Maybe move everyone forward, he suggested gently. Sure, Chloe said, forcing a laugh, but her hand trembled as she clutched her bouquet. Meanwhile, across the ocean, the same sunlight poured over rolling hills of Tuscany, catching on silver olive leaves. The villa glowed like a painting, stone walls wrapped in vines, lanterns swaying in the breeze. The long table was set beneath the grape canopy lined with candles, wild flowers and clay plates handmade by local artisans. Rachel's children chased each other between the trees. Eli strummed his guitar, softly testing the chords of a love song. Grandma Helen sat in the front row holding a small olive branch she'd plucked that morning, a symbol of peace, she said. I stood inside, looking out through the open doorway. My wedding gown wasn't grand or glittering, just silk, simple and soft, catching the afternoon light. Lucia, the local chef who had become a friend, pinned a sprig of olive leaves into my hair and whispered, for good fortune and for truth. When I stepped outside, the breeze lifted the veil from my shoulders. The guests turned faces glowing in the golden light. Grandma rose first, her eyes bright. There she is, she said softly, and for the first time I believed her. There was no orchestra, no choreography, just Eli's guitar, the rustle of vines, and the sound of people who had chosen to be there. As I walked down the aisle, I thought about every empty chair that had once represented absence, birthdays, forgotten graduations, unattended silences mistaken for peace. But here, every seat was filled. Every gaze met mine, unflinching. The officiant, a local friend of Lucia's, spoke in melodic English. Love is not measured by how many are invited, but by who shows up. The words sank deep. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't read from paper. My vows came out like breath. To the ones who show up, I began, my voice steady. This love is for you. For those who believed in me before I ever proved I was enough. For the ones who stayed when it wasn't convenient. Rachel wiped her eyes. Grandma nodded slowly, whispering, That's my girl. When the ceremony ended, applause rose, not loud, but warm, human, alive. The courtyard filled with laughter and the smell of truffle butter and rosemary. Lucia's kitchen doors swung open, carrying platters of handmade pasta and roasted vegetables. The lanterns above flickered on as the sky turned violet. It wasn't perfect. It was real. Halfway through dinner, Rachel showed me her phone. They're talking about it already, she said, half laughing. Photos had begun circulating through the family group chats, candles, the villa, the table glowing under the grapevines, Grandma laughing with Eli's arm around her shoulder. Within hours, the images reached Boston. At the ballroom, Chloe was posing for her couple's portrait when one of the bridesmaids gasped, scrolling through her phone. "Wait, isn't that your family? They're in Italy." "What?" Chloe frowned, snatching the phone. On the screen was a photo of me and my husband standing beneath the Tuscan sky, lanterns glowing behind us, our family smiling around the table. Grandma holding up her olive branch. Rachel's kids throwing petals. Chloe froze. The photographer hesitated, lowering his camera around her. The murmur started soft at first, then spreading. "Isn't that Aunt Marianne and Uncle Ray? I thought they were supposed to be here." Mom leaned over Dad's shoulder, eyes narrowing at the phone. "What is this?" she whispered. Dad's face drained of color. "It's Ruby's wedding." Chloe's breath hitched. They went to hers. Mom didn't answer. The silence stretched louder than any outburst could have been. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. The band played on, trying to fill the tension, but even the music sounded hollow. When the officiant toasted to family unity, no one raised a glass. Back in Tuscany, laughter rippled through the courtyard as Lucia poured wine into glasses and said, "Eat, drink, and remember why you came." Grandma leaned across the table and took my hand. "I've waited a long time to see this, Ruby," she said. "This is what family was supposed to look like." The night deepened into gold and violet. Someone started a slow song, and guests began to dance barefoot on the stone floor. For a moment, I stepped away, walking toward the olive grove. The air smelled of woodsome smoke and lavender. The villa behind me glowed with light. My phone buzzed on the table, messages, missed calls, unread voicemails. I didn't open them. I didn't need to. In Boston, Mom's voice trembled as she called again, this time, leaving a message. "Ruby, how could you do this to us? Everyone's talking about it. We looked like fools." I listened to it the next morning, sipping coffee under the same olive tree where I'd said my vows. The sun was rising, turning the hills amber. I hit play once more, then deleted it. They thought humiliation was the punishment. It wasn't. The real consequence was realizing that I had moved on without needing their permission. The photos kept circulating online, shared by cousins, reposted by friends. The image of Grandma raising her olive branch became the quiet symbol of our reunion. No captions, no explanations, just truth. For years, they had cropped me out of their pictures. This time, I didn't need to fight for space in theirs. I had built my own frame and filled it with light. The week after the weddings, Tuscany fell quiet again. The lanterns were taken down. The laughter faded into memory, but the air still held the warmth of what we'd built. The long table stood empty now, scattered with dried petals and wine stains, proof that something real had happened there. One morning, as I was packing away the last of the decorations, my phone rang. "Mom." For a moment, I almost let it go to voicemail, but something inside me said, "Answer, not for them, for yourself." Her voice was shaky, defensive. "Ruby, do you have any idea how embarrassed we were? Everyone at Chloe's wedding was talking about your little event in Italy. You made us look heartless." I took a slow breath, watching sunlight crawl across the floor. "I didn't make you look any way, Mom," I said evenly. "I just gave people a chance to see the truth." There was silence on the line, then a trembling sigh. "You've always been so cold. We were just trying to keep peace." Before I could reply, another voice came through Grandma's. "Judy, that's enough," she said, firm but calm. "You spent years asking this girl to shrink herself for your comfort. Now she finally stood tall, and you're calling it cruelty." "No, my dear, that's freedom." Mom said nothing after that. The call ended quietly, like a door closing without a slam. I stepped outside the olive trees, swaying gently in the breeze. Lucia came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Everything okay?" I smiled faintly. Better than okay. It's finally quiet in all the right ways. She looked toward the long table and said softly, then eat, Sonora. You've earned peace. That evening, I set one last plate at the head of the table, the seat that had always been empty. I tied a small olive green ribbon around the chair and whispered, for the girl who once waited to be chosen. The wind moved through the vines like a gentle sigh, and for the first time, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt free. Later, as the sun disappeared behind the hills, I poured a glass of wine and thought of Grandma's words. Love isn't management, it's showing up. She was right. You don't need to fight for a seat at someone else's table. Build your own and the right people will find their way to it. If this story hit home for you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. And remember, sometimes the quietest revenge is peace. Hit subscribe for more stories like this.